The air was heavy with smoke and sweat. The sound of coins clinking and voices shouting filled the alien marketplace. Stalls were lined with strange foods, weapons, and cages. The cages held the broken, the unwanted, those who were no longer free. Among them stood a thin alien woman, her back bent, her skin marked with bruises. Her large, dark eyes looked down at the dusty ground, never daring to rise. Around her, the crowd laughed and pointed, tossing small metal coins to the overseers, waiting for their turn to take the whip. It was a cruel game. For just $1, anyone could step forward, take the whip in hand, and strike her. The whip cracked like fire in the air, each sound followed by gasps or laughter. Every strike left another mark on her back, but she did not scream. She did not cry. She only trembled quietly, like a shadow that wished to vanish. The more silent she was, the more the crowd enjoyed the game. They shouted at her to cry louder, to beg, but she remained still. That silence only made them strike harder. Children watched from their parents' arms, clapping as if it were a show. Traders shouted for bets, mocking her weakness. "How many lashes until she falls?" they called, waving their hands with excitement. The overseers encouraged it, eager to collect more coins. The game was not about punishment. It was about entertainment. Her suffering was their joy. The woman's knees trembled, but she refused to fall. Perhaps she had learned that falling would only bring worse. Perhaps she had accepted this as her fate. She was no longer treated like a person, only like an object. Her chains rattled each time she shifted her weight. Her hands, thin and scarred, tried to cover her stomach, but she could not protect herself from the whip. One man stepped forward, grinning with yellow teeth. He tossed his coin, grabbed the whip, and cracked it across her shoulder. The sound echoed through the market. The crowd cheered. The woman flinched, her body shaking, but her lips stayed shut. He struck again and again. Her breath caught. Her chest rose and fell quickly, but still, no sound escaped her. The man grew frustrated, shouting at her to cry. He wanted tears. He wanted her broken. When he failed, he threw the whip back with anger and walked away. Another stepped forward, tossing his coin, eager to try. Above the noise, a figure paused at the edge of the crowd. It was a human. His clothes were dusty from travel, his boots heavy from long roads. His face was marked by years of war, his jaw set firm. He was taller than most around him, his broad shoulders casting a shadow across the ground. His eyes fixed on the woman, narrowing as he watched. Unlike the others, he did not laugh. Unlike the others, he did not cheer. The human's hand curled into a fist. He had seen cruelty before, but this was different. This was not war. This was not survival. This was joy built on pain, a game played with the body of a living being. Each lash struck not only the woman, but something inside him. His chest burned with anger, his teeth clenched. The crowd's laughter felt like poison in his ears. Another whip cracked, louder than before. The woman stumbled, her knees almost hitting the ground. The crowd shouted, betting on how many more she could take before she collapsed. Her breath was shallow now, her head spinning. A drop of blood slid down her arm, staining the dirt below. Still, she did not cry. Still, she did not break. The human took a step closer, then another. The crowd did not notice him at first, too busy cheering for more lashes. The overseer grinned as another coin clinked into his hand. The whip was raised high again, ready to fall. For a brief moment, the woman's eyes lifted. They did not rise to the crowd, but only to the sky. Perhaps she prayed. Perhaps she hoped for nothing. Her lips moved in silence, a whisper too quiet for anyone to hear. The whip came down, but before it struck, the human's voice cut through the air. It was not loud, but it was sharp, carrying weight the crowd could not ignore. He stepped into the circle, his shadow falling across the chained woman. The whip froze in midair as the crowd turned. Gasps and whispers spread quickly. A human was standing there, eyes burning, fists clenched, as if daring the entire market to continue. The overseer frowned, confused and annoyed. "You want to turn?" he asked, shaking the whip. He laughed, thinking this human had joined the game. $1, one whip. That is the rule. Pay and strike. It is simple. The crowd laughed with him, expecting the human to throw his coin and take his place in the cruel sport. But the human did not laugh. He did not smile. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a coin, and held it between his fingers. His eyes stayed on the overseer, then dropped to the whip. He stepped forward slowly, the coin glinting in the dull light. He tossed it. the overseer catching it with a greedy grin. The human reached for the whip, but instead of turning toward the woman, he turned toward the man who had just been ready to strike her. His grip on the whip was strong, his eyes sharper than blades. The crowd went silent. For the first time that day, the marketplace froze. The human stood there, whip in hand, not facing the weak woman, but the crowd itself. His voice was calm, but filled with fire. "Enough," he said. The alien woman looked up, her eyes meeting his. In that single moment, her chest ached with something she had not felt in years. Not fear, not pain. Something else, hope. The human's voice had cut through the laughter like a blade, and for a moment, the entire market seemed to stop breathing. The overseer blinked in surprise, then let out a sharp laugh, thinking it was some kind of joke. "Enough," he repeated, tilting his head. "Human, you paid for the whip? Use it. That is the rule." His grin widened, showing sharp teeth. "Or perhaps you are too soft." The crowd erupted again, shouting and jeering. They loved the challenge, the chance to humiliate a stranger. The human's hand tightened on the whip handle, but he did not raise it against the chained woman. Instead, he turned and held it firm, blocking the next alien who had stepped forward. The man froze, his coin still in his hand. The crowd gasped. No one had ever done this before. No one had ever broken the game. The overseer's smile vanished. His voice grew cold. "This is not your fight, human. Step aside. She is property, nothing more. You have no right to interfere." The human's jaw tightened. His eyes burned with anger, but his voice remained steady. "She is not property. She is alive, and no one here will touch her again." The words struck harder than any whip. Murmurs rippled through the market. Some laughed, thinking him insane. Others frowned, sensing danger. The alien woman lifted her head, her eyes widening. She could not believe what she had heard. No one had ever spoken like that for her, not once in all the years of pain. The overseer snarled, stepping closer. "Do you know where you are, human? Do you know the law? She belongs to us. We sell her pain for coins, and everyone here accepts it. Who are you to defy us?" The human did not answer with words at first. He lifted the whip and snapped it to the ground at the overseer's feet, the crack echoing like thunder. Dust rose. The crowd flinched back. His voice followed, low but clear. "I am the one who will not stand by while you laugh at suffering." The marketplace roared with voices now, half of them furious, half of them excited. Some shouted, "Kill him," while others whispered about human madness. A few even wondered if this defiance would spark something bigger. The overseer's face twisted with rage, but beneath it was a flicker of uncertainty. Humans were known for many things: war, stubbornness, fire that refused to die. Maybe this one was dangerous. The chained woman's lips trembled. She whispered softly, barely audible, "Why? Why would you protect me?" Her voice cracked from dryness and pain, yet the words reached the human's ears. He turned to her, his expression softening just slightly. "Because you're alive, and that is enough." Her eyes filled with tears, though she did not let them fall. She had long forgotten what it felt like to hear words of kindness. The whip marks on her back still burned, but for the first time, she felt the weight inside her chest shift. Hope was fragile, but it was alive. The overseer waved his hand, and two guards pushed through the crowd, their armor clinking, their long staffs glowing faintly with energy. "Take him down," the overseer ordered. "Show him what happens when a human forgets his place." The crowd cheered again, eager for blood. This was no longer just a game with the woman. Now it was a spectacle, a human standing against their system. Everyone wanted to see him crushed. The guards moved in, circling the human. They were larger than him, with thick limbs and sharp fangs. One swung his staff, aiming for the human's head. The human ducked, the weapon slicing the air. The second guard lunged, but the human twisted and slammed the whip's handle into his side. The alien staggered back with a grunt. The crowd howled. The overseer leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. He had expected the human to fall quickly, but instead, the fight was beginning to turn. The human's movements were sharp, practiced. He fought like a soldier, each step precise, each strike filled with purpose. The alien woman's heart raced as she watched. She wanted to close her eyes, afraid he would be killed, but she could not look away. She had never seen anyone fight for her, never seen anyone stand against the whip. Every move he made struck something deep inside her. One guard rushed again, swinging hard. The human caught the staff with both hands, twisting it free and striking back in one motion. The alien dropped, groaning in the dust. The other guard charged, teeth bared, but the human's fist met his jaw, sending him crashing into the ground. The marketplace fell silent for a heartbeat. The human stood tall, breathing hard, his knuckles red. 2 guards lay broken at his feet. Dust floated in the air, and the only sound was the rattling of the woman's chains. Then the silence shattered into chaos. The crowd shouted in shock and anger. Some demanded more guards. Others cried that the human was cursed. A few, very few, looked at him with something new, respect. The overseer's face twisted into fury. His voice bellowed across the market. You dare to strike my guards? You dare to break our laws? His words dripped with venom, but beneath them was fear. If this human could defeat 2 guards, what else could he do? The human's chest rose and fell, but his voice was steady. I will not let you harm her again. The alien woman's body shook, not from the whip this time, but from the storm of emotions inside her. She had been beaten so long she had forgotten what it meant to be seen. Now this stranger, this human, stood bleeding, defying the entire market, all for her. She whispered again, her voice trembling but clear enough to carry in the stillness between shouts. Please, don't die. The human's eyes met hers. For the briefest moment, the rage on his face softened. He gave the smallest nod, as if to promise her that he would not fall. The promise was silent, but it carried more weight than any chain. The overseer stepped back, uncertain for the first time. His grip on power was built on fear, and now fear was shifting. The crowd no longer looked only at him. They looked at the human too, and in their eyes, doubt had begun to grow. The dust from the fight still hung in the air, and the sound of the crowd echoed like waves crashing against stone. Yet in the middle of all that chaos, there was silence between 2 pairs of eyes. The alien woman, her body weak and covered with scars, dared to lift her head for the first time. Her long hair clung to her face, her lips were dry, and her eyes, once dull with hopelessness, now trembled with something fragile. She looked directly at the human, and for the first time in years, her eyes met someone else's without fear. Her chest rose quickly, her breath uneven. She did not understand why this stranger was standing there, bleeding and unarmed, yet shielding her from pain. For so long, she had been treated like nothing, a shadow, a toy for others to break. Now, someone was challenging all of it, and he was not even one of her kind. Her lips moved, and her voice cracked, almost breaking apart as the words slipped out. Why? Why would you protect me? The human heard her, though her voice was barely more than a whisper. His eyes softened, though the fire of anger still burned in them. He stepped closer, placing himself fully between her and the crowd. His voice was steady, low but sharp enough for everyone nearby to hear. Because you're alive, and that is enough. The woman's eyes widened, as if those words themselves were unreal. Alive? She had almost forgotten what that meant. To her, living had been nothing but chains, lashes, and hunger. No one had ever cared whether she lived or died, not until now. Her lips trembled, but she said nothing more. Tears formed in the corners of her eyes, though she forced herself not to let them fall. If she cried, the crowd would laugh louder. But this time, the tears were not from pain. The crowd reacted with a roar, voices clashing together in disbelief. Some shouted insults at the human, calling him mad, calling him weak. Others laughed, mocking him for protecting a worthless slave. But a few were quiet, their eyes narrowing as if they saw something different in his stance. The overseer, however, was furious. His face twisted, his teeth bared. He could not let such words stand. If even one person believed them, his control would crumble. Alive? The overseer spat, stepping forward. His voice carried across the marketplace. She is less than dirt. Her life is ours to sell, ours to break. She has no worth, no soul, no future. That is why she is here. He turned to the crowd, raising his arms. And you all know it. You all paid to see her beaten. Do not let a foolish human make you doubt the truth. The crowd cheered in response, but it was weaker this time. Their excitement had dimmed, tangled with confusion. The human did not back down. He stood taller, his shadow long in the dusty light. His hand gripped the whip, but he held it pointed at the ground, never toward the woman. His voice cut through the overseer's speech. She has more strength than any of you. She endured all your cruelty, and she is still standing. He gestured to her, his eyes blazing. That is worth more than your coins. Gasps spread through the market. The alien woman blinked in shock, staring at him. No one had ever spoken of her like that. She wanted to believe him, but her heart ached with doubt. She had been told for years she was worthless, broken, less than nothing. Could this human truly see her differently? The overseer's fury only grew. He motioned to the guards, who were slowly rising from the ground after their defeat. "Seize him," he roared. "Break him, break his bones, and let him beg for his life like the slave he tries to protect." The guards hesitated. Their jaws tightened, their pride wounded from the beating they had taken. Yet they also felt a flicker of fear. This human was not ordinary. He fought like someone who had seen real war, someone who would not break easily. Still, they obeyed, stepping forward again, though slower than before. The alien woman's chains rattled as she shifted, watching the human with wide, desperate eyes. Her heart pounded painfully in her chest. She whispered again, softer this time, almost afraid he could hear. "You will die if you stay." The human turned his head just enough to look at her. His eyes, tired yet fierce, met hers. "Then I die standing." The words were simple, but they shook her to her core. He was not protecting her because of reward, not because of gain, but simply because he believed it was right. That truth was heavier than the chains on her wrists. The crowd grew restless, caught between fear and curiosity. Whispers ran through them like fire. Some pointed at the woman's face, shocked to see her staring at the human, as though he were more than just another man. Some whispered about humans being reckless, dangerous, unable to submit like others. The overseer noticed those whispers too, and they frightened him. If the crowd began to see meaning in the human's actions, his whole system of cruelty could fall apart. He had to crush this spark before it spread. He pointed at the human with a trembling hand. "Strike him down, now!" The guards lunged again, and the fight began anew. But the woman's eyes never left the human's figure. Each movement he made seemed larger than life, like a storm against the cruelty of the world. Her heart raced, her breath sharp. For the first time, she wished, not just for him to live, but for herself to live as well. If he believed she was worth protecting, maybe it was true. Maybe she was not only chains and scars. As the dust rose again, her whisper escaped her lips, a fragile prayer carried into the noise. "Please, don't stop." The overseer's patience snapped like the whip itself. His voice bellowed across the marketplace, shaking with fury and fear. "Enough! This human mocks us all! Bring out the guards! Bring them all!" His command echoed, and heavy footsteps thundered from behind the stalls. More armored guards pushed their way through the crowd, their weapons gleaming under the pale light. The laughter of the market shifted into something darker. The people wanted blood now, not just entertainment. They wanted to see the human crushed into dust. The alien woman's chains rattled as she flinched. Her body trembled, her eyes darting between the growing circle of guards and the lone human who stood unarmed before them. Her heart pounded painfully, fear gripping her throat. She knew what was coming. She had seen it many times before. No one defied the overseers and lived. Her lips trembled as she whispered to herself, "He will die. Because of me." The human did not move back. His boots were planted firmly in the dirt, his shoulders squared. His chest rose and fell with calm, steady breaths, though blood still trickled down his arm from the earlier fight. His eyes stayed fixed on the overseer, sharp and unyielding. He looked like a man ready to face an army alone. The overseer sneered. "You think your words matter here, human? You think your pity makes her worth saving?" He pointed at the chained woman with disgust. "She is nothing. She was born to suffer, and you dare to give her hope? You insult our laws, our power, our way of life. For that, you will be broken." The guards closed in, their weapons raised. Spears tipped with glowing energy hummed in the air, ready to strike. The crowd roared with approval, hungry for the sight of human blood. Some shouted wagers on how long he would last, 10 seconds, maybe 20. They had no doubt he would fall. The alien woman's breath caught in her throat. She wanted to cry out, to beg him to run, but the chains held her still, silencing her. She had never begged for anyone before, only for herself, for mercy that never came. But now, for this human, she wanted to beg the world to spare him. Her voice finally broke through, louder than she thought she could manage. "Please, don't fight them. They will kill you." The human turned his head slightly, his eyes meeting hers across the dust-filled air. His gaze was steady, calm, but there was a fire in it that seemed unshakable. "If I walk away, they will kill you," he said simply. "So I stay." The words struck her harder than any lash. He was not a fool. He knew the danger, and yet he chose to face it for her. She felt her chest ache with something unfamiliar, something painful yet alive. It was not fear. It was hope mixed with terror. The overseer raised his hand, and the guards charged. Their boots slammed into the ground, their weapons glowing. The first swung his spear downward, but the human sidestepped with quick precision, the weapon striking only dirt. The human's fist shot upward, slamming into the alien's chin, sending him staggering back into the crowd. Another guard lunged from behind. The human turned, whipping the weapon he still held in a tight arc. It cracked across the alien's chest, knocking him to the ground. The crowd gasped. 2 guards down already. The overseer's smile faltered, but more came. 3 surrounded him at once, spears jabbing in quick succession. The human ducked low, rolled across the dirt, and came up with a strike that disarmed one, then slammed the handle of the whip into another's temple. Pain shot through his own ribs as a spear grazed his side, blood soaking his shirt, but he stood tall again. The alien woman could barely breathe. Her eyes followed every move, her body tense with fear and awe. He was bleeding, outnumbered, surrounded, yet he fought with the strength of someone who refused to fall. She whispered his name, though she did not even know it. She whispered it as if saying it might keep him alive. The overseer grew desperate. "Do not hold back. Kill him," he screamed. More guards leapt into the fray. The crowd's cheers rose into a storm, but it was not the same laughter as before. There was excitement now, fear too. They had come to see cruelty, but what they saw was defiance. The human's fists flew, his body moving with the rhythm of a warrior who had seen countless battles. Each strike was precise, each step filled with purpose. But the fight was brutal. The guards were many, and their weapons cut across his flesh again and again. Blood streaked his arms, his face, yet still he stood. He gritted his teeth, pushing through pain, refusing to give ground. The alien woman's nails dug into her palms. Her body shook as she cried out, louder this time, no longer caring if the crowd mocked her. "Stop! Stop! You'll kill him! Please, stop!" Her voice cracked, breaking years of silence, shattering the shell she had built to survive. For the first time, she screamed not for herself, but for someone else. The overseer turned on her, furious. "Be silent, animal," he spat. But her voice had already spread through the crowd. People turned, surprised to see her cry out. She had been beaten countless times before without a sound, and now, for this human, she begged. It was a sight that unsettled them. The human heard her scream, and it gave him strength. His vision blurred from blood, his muscles burned, but her voice cut through the pain. He drove his fist into another guard, knocking him unconscious. He grabbed a spear from the ground, twirled it, and pointed it toward the last 2 standing. His chest rose heavily, but his eyes glowed with fire. The market fell into silence again. Dozens of guards defeated, one human still standing. Dust and blood mixed beneath his boots. The chained woman's tears slid down her face, shining in the light. She looked at him as if he were not just a man, but something greater, something unbreakable. The overseer's hand shook as he pointed at him, rage and fear battling in his eyes. "You cannot win. Even if you defeat us all, the law will never let her go." The human tightened his grip on the spear, his gaze unwavering. "Then let your law come for me," he said. "But she will not be touched again." The woman's heart pounded so hard it hurt. For the first time in her life, she believed it might be true. The dust had barely settled when the guards fell back, groaning in the dirt. Broken spears lay scattered across the ground, and the crowd's noise rose like a storm. Some shouted with excitement, others with anger, and many simply stared in disbelief. A single human, bleeding and unarmed at the start, had thrown down the overseer's guards as if they were nothing. But the fight was not over. The overseer's pride would not allow it to end here. He motioned for more guards, his voice cracking with rage. "Finish him! Tear him apart!" he screamed, spittle flying from his mouth. His hand shook, not only with fury but with fear. This human was proving something dangerous, that their strength, their cruelty could be resisted. If others saw it and believed, the overseer's control would shatter. The next wave of guards charged, heavier than before, armored head to toe. They carried long metal staffs that sparked with energy, buzzing with deadly force. The human tightened his grip on the stolen spear. His chest heaved with exhaustion, his shirt torn and soaked with blood, but his eyes remained sharp. He stood tall, refusing to step back, even as his legs trembled from fatigue. The alien woman's body shook against the chains, her wrists raw where the iron bit into her skin. Her lips parted as she tried to shout, but her voice broke, no words coming out. Fear pressed against her chest like a weight, but another feeling burned through it, something she had not felt for years. Pride. Watching him fight, watching him refuse to fall, she felt something stir inside her, a memory of what it meant to want life, not just survival. The guards came at once. One swung his staff high, electricity crackling, but the human ducked and drove the spear forward, slamming into the alien's chest and knocking him back. Another tried to strike from behind, yet the human twisted might, dragging the spear in a wide arc. Sparks flashed as the weapon clashed, the noise sharp and piercing. The human's arm ached, his wounds burned, but he kept moving, every strike driven by will alone. A guard managed to hit him across the side, the energy sparking through his ribs. His body jolted with pain, and he dropped to one knee for a moment. The crowd roared, thinking it was the end. But he gritted his teeth, forcing himself up, the spear steady in his hand. He struck hard, disarming the guard and driving him into the dirt. Blood ran from his lip, but his eyes glowed like fire. The alien woman cried out without meaning to. Her voice cracked the air. "Stand! Please, stand!" Her scream startled even the crowd. They had never heard her voice so loud, so desperate. For years, she had endured pain in silence, but now she shouted for him, as if her voice itself could hold him up. The human's heart thudded as he heard her, and it gave him strength. He fought with renewed fury, swinging the spear and knocking another guard to the ground. The overseer's face twisted, his confidence fading into fear. The marketplace was no longer laughing. The crowd had gone quiet, their jeers replaced with awe and uncertainty. Still, the human was only flesh and blood. Every move drained him, every strike tore at his wounds. His shoulders were heavy, his legs barely carrying him. Yet he refused to stop. One guard grabbed him from behind, locking his arms. Another charged forward with a staff aimed for his chest. The alien woman's scream pierced the air again, her voice raw. "No!" The human slammed his head backward, cracking into the face of the one holding him. Pain flared in his skull, but the grip loosened. He tore free, ducking at the last second as the staff slashed past him. With one desperate swing, he thrust the spear upward, striking the attacker down. His body swayed, his strength nearly gone. But he stood again, blood soaking the dirt beneath him. The woman's tears spilled down her face. Her body shook, her breath uneven, but her eyes stayed locked on him. She had thought herself dead long ago, but now, watching him fight, she felt alive for the first time. Her heart screamed louder than her voice. He cannot fall. Not here. Not now. The overseer's fury broke into desperation. He looked at the guards lying beaten on the ground, at the crowd that no longer laughed but watched in silence. His grip tightened on his cane, and his voice cracked. "Do you fools not see? He is just a human. He cannot stand against us all." But even he could hear the weakness in his own words. The human staggered, his breath heavy, but his eyes never left the overseer. He took one slow step forward, then another. The crowd parted in silence, their gazes fixed on him. Bloodied, battered, but unbroken, he walked like a storm through the wreckage of the fight. The spear in his hand dragged across the ground, leaving a line in the dirt. The alien woman's lips trembled. Her voice, soft but steady, reached for him across the silence. "Please, don't stop. Don't leave me." His eyes met hers, and for a brief moment, the fury in them softened. He gave the smallest nod, and though he said nothing, the meaning was clear. He would not leave her. Not while he still had breath. The overseer stepped back, his face pale. He realized then that fear had shifted in the market. It was no longer the woman who looked powerless, nor the crowd who controlled her pain. The power now stood with the bloodied human, and every eye could feel it. The woman's heart pounded, her chains clattering as she pulled against them without thinking. She wanted to run to him, to stand beside him, but the iron held her fast. Still, for the first time, she did not feel like a slave. She felt like someone worth protecting. The human lifted the spear, pointing it at the overseer. His voice, low and rough from blood, carried across the silent market. "Send all the guards you want," he said. "I will not fall. not before her. The crowd trembled at his words. Some looked away, ashamed. Others stared in awe, their hearts stirring with something they did not understand. The overseer clenched his fists, his lips pressed tight, but he could not hide the fear in his eyes. And the alien woman, chained and broken, whispered through her tears, "He fights for me. He truly fights for me." For the first time in her life, she believed it might be true. The marketplace stood frozen in shock. Dust drifted in the air, the silence so heavy that even the groans of the beaten guards felt distant. The human, covered in blood and sweat, stood like a wall between the chained woman and the world. His chest rose and fell slowly, his grip on the spear firm, though his body shook from exhaustion. The crowd stared at him with wide eyes, unsure whether to cheer, fear, or curse. The overseer's voice broke the silence, sharp and cruel. "You think you've won? Foolish human!" He spat on the ground and raised a piece of parchment, its edges stamped with a glowing seal. "This is the law. She is not a person. She is property. No matter how many guards you beat, no matter how many words you shout, the law will not change." His laughter rang bitterly through the air, though it carried the edge of desperation. The human's eyes narrowed, his jaw tightening. He took a step forward, dragging the spear across the ground. The sound made the overseer falter, his laughter cracking. The human stopped only a few steps away, close enough for the overseer to feel the heat of his presence. His voice, though low, carried to every corner of the marketplace. "Law?" he said. "What is a law worth if it demands cruelty?" The crowd shifted uneasily. These were words they had never heard spoken aloud. People glanced at one another, uncertain, as though hearing something dangerous and forbidden. The alien woman's heart pounded inside her chest. Her body shook with fear, yet her eyes burned with something else, hope. The overseer tried to hold his ground. "You have no right to question us. She belongs to us. If you want her, then take her as property as the law allows. But you cannot free her. Freedom does not exist here." His smile twisted again, believing he had trapped the human. "Choose, human. Own her or watch her die." The woman gasped, her breath catching. Her whole body trembled. She knew this was the end. No one would tear the seal of ownership, not in front of so many witnesses. To challenge the law was to invite death. Her lips trembled, her heart sinking back into despair. She whispered, barely audible, "Please, don't." The human stared at the overseer for a long moment, his eyes burning. Then slowly he reached out, his fingers brushing against the parchment. The crowd leaned forward, waiting for his choice. The overseer grinned, certain the human would submit. But instead of signing the document or claiming her as property, the human tightened his grip and tore the parchment in half. The sound of the rip cracked louder than a whip, echoing across the market. Shreds of paper drifted in the air like ashes. The overseer's face turned pale, his mouth hanging open. The crowd gasped, their shock rolling like thunder. No one had ever done such a thing. The seal glowed briefly, then died, its magic broken. The human dropped the torn pieces to the ground and stamped his boot on them. His voice thundered across the silent stalls. "She is not property. She is free." The words struck everyone like a hammer. Some laughed nervously, thinking him insane. Others stared with wide eyes, their hearts pounding with something they didn't dare name. The alien woman's knees gave out, and she nearly collapsed, her chains the only thing holding her upright. Tears streamed down her face, her chest aching as her voice cracked. "Free?" she whispered, as if the word itself were foreign to her tongue. The overseer roared, his fury spilling into madness. "Blasphemy! You dare destroy the seal? You dare spit on our laws?" He turned to the crowd, waving his arms. "Do you see this madness? This human insults us all. Will you let him destroy everything we have built?" But the crowd no longer shouted in agreement. They murmured instead, their voices low, uncertain. For years they had come to the marketplace to watch suffering, to toss their coins for cruelty. Yet now they had seen something they could not unsee. A single man standing against them all, bloodied but unbroken. A man declaring freedom for one who was called worthless. The alien woman sobbed softly, her chains rattling as she sank to her knees. Her tears were not only of pain this time, but of disbelief. Someone had spoken the word free for her. Someone had broken the seal. For the first time in her life, she felt the chains as weaker than they had ever been. The human bent down, his hand brushing her arm gently. His touch was careful, almost afraid of hurting her further. He looked into her eyes and spoke softly, words only for her. "No one will hurt you again. Not while I breathe." Her lips trembled, and though her throat was raw, she forced the words out. "Why? Why me?" He smiled faintly, though his face was covered in blood and sweat. "Because you are alive, and that is enough." The overseer shrieked in rage, his voice breaking. "Kill him! Kill them both!" But this time, the guards hesitated. Their hands tightened on their weapons, yet their feet refused to move. They had seen their comrades fall. They had seen the human tear the seal, an act they themselves had never dared. For the first time, doubt spread through their ranks. The crowd, too, was divided. Some shouted for blood, but others stood silent, their eyes fixed on the human with something close to respect. A dangerous thought crept into their hearts. If this man could defy the overseer, maybe they could too. The alien woman's tears kept falling, but her lips curved into something fragile and new, a smile. It was small, trembling, but it was real. She looked at the human, and for the first time in her life, she believed that freedom might not be just a dream. The human straightened, standing tall despite his wounds. He dropped the spear to the ground and spread his arms wide, as if daring the overseer to strike. His voice rang clear, louder than the overseer's screams. "You can kill me, but you cannot unmake what I have done." She is free, and no one can chain her again. The silence that followed was heavier than any roar. The overseer's face twisted with rage, but in his eyes there was fear, the fear of losing control. And in the woman's heart, a new fire was born, one that would never be extinguished. The chains rattled as the alien woman slowly pushed herself to her feet. Her legs were weak, trembling under her own weight, but something inside her would not let her stay on the ground any longer. She stood with her head raised, her eyes fixed on the human who had bled for her, fought for her, and broken the seal that once defined her life. The crowd parted in silence, watching this fragile figure rise from the dust. It was not strength of body that held her up, but the spark of freedom lit by his defiance. The human turned his head slightly to see her stand. His chest still rose heavily with each breath, his body broken and bloody, yet a faint smile touched his lips. He had fought through pain, through laws, through cruelty, all to give her this moment. For the first time, she was not a shadow to be mocked or beaten. She was a person standing beside him. The overseer's fury only deepened at the sight. His eyes widened, and his face twisted with rage. "No!" he shouted, his voice cracking. "She cannot stand beside you. She is nothing. She will always be nothing." His words echoed in desperation, as though he were trying to convince himself as much as the crowd. But the crowd did not cheer him this time. They had witnessed the impossible, a human defying the overseer's law, defeating his guards, and raising a woman long considered worthless to her feet. Whispers moved through the market like wildfire. Some asked if the human was mad, others if he was blessed by some higher power. Many felt their hearts stir in ways they could not explain. The overseer stumbled back, realizing the shift. His power had always come from fear and obedience, but fear was changing direction, flowing toward the human instead. His voice grew shrill. "You think you are a hero? You think you have won? The law will hunt you. Soldiers will come. Samhain, you cannot escape. And she," he pointed at the woman with a shaking hand, "she will drag you down with her." The woman's lips parted, and her voice rose before the human could answer. "No," she said, her voice trembling but clear enough for all to hear. "I will not drag him down. He lifted me up." Tears streamed down her face, but her chin remained high. "I was nothing until he saw me, and now I will not go back to chains." The crowd gasped. For years she had been silent, her suffering their entertainment. To hear her speak now, to hear her claim herself in front of them, was like a crack of thunder. The overseer's face drained of color. He shouted for the guards again, but they still hesitated. None wanted to step forward. None wanted to face the man who had broken them, nor silence the woman who spoke like a flame. The human stepped closer to her, his hand gently brushing the edge of her chains. "You are free," he said softly. "These cannot hold you anymore." His eyes lifted to the overseer, sharp as steel, and neither can he. The overseer screamed in fury, grabbing the fallen whip from the dirt. He charged forward, his arm raised, ready to strike her down himself. The crowd gasped, but the human moved faster. He caught the overseer's wrist mid-swing, the whip stopping inches from her face. The overseer's eyes widened in shock as the human squeezed, his strength unyielding. The whip slipped from his grasp and fell uselessly to the ground. The human's voice was calm, almost gentle, though his grip was iron. Your time of cruelty is over. Then, with a push, he sent the overseer sprawling backward into the dust. The man scrambled, his robes dirty, his pride shattered. The crowd's silence broke into a low murmur, no longer on his side. The alien woman's tears flowed freely now, but they were not tears of despair. She took a step closer to the human, her chains dragging behind her. With shaking hands, she reached out and touched his arm. Her voice cracked, but her words carried more strength than any whip. No one will ever take this away from me again. The human turned his head, meeting her gaze. For a moment, everything else faded. The crowd, the overseer, the fear of soldiers to come. In her eyes, he saw life returning, and in his, she saw the promise of protection. They stood together, two figures against a world of cruelty, and the world seemed smaller because of it. The crowd, restless and uneasy, began to shift. Some lowered their heads, ashamed of the laughter they had once shouted. Others whispered with awe, realizing they had witnessed something no law could erase. A spark had been lit, one that could spread far beyond the market. The overseer, lying in the dust, screamed threats that no longer carried weight. His voice was drowned by the sound of the human's footsteps as he stepped forward, snapping the last of the woman's chains with one strong pull. The iron clattered to the ground, and she stumbled free, falling into his arms. He held her upright, steadying her as if she were the most precious thing in the galaxy. The silence of the market broke with her sobbing. She clung to him, not in weakness, but in gratitude and release. Her voice was muffled against his chest, but the words were clear. "Thank you for seeing me, for saving me." The human rested a hand on her back, his eyes scanning the crowd. His voice, though quiet, carried through the marketplace. "No one will hurt her again, not while I stand." And for the first time in that place of cruelty, no one laughed. No one threw coins. No one raised a whip. They only watched as a human and a freed woman stood together, defying everything they had been taught to believe. The overseer crawled backward, powerless. His kingdom of pain had cracked, and he knew it. The market would never be the same. The crowd would never forget what they had seen. And the woman, once beaten for sport, would never again bow her head in silence. Hand in hand, she and the human walked through the market's path. The crowd parted without a word, watching in awe as the chains lay broken in the dust behind them. Each step they took was not just escape, it was the beginning of something new. The woman lifted her face to the sky, tears drying on her cheeks. For the first time, she did not look down. For the first time, she felt the weight of freedom in her chest. And beside her walked the human who had made it real. His strength not only in his fists, but in the belief that no life was worthless. Together they left the market, and the whispers of change followed them like a shadow.